Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye coverage of the 2014 elections continues. We're interviewing Mr. Mark Elliott of Oshkosh. He's a Republican candidate for the 54th Assembly District. Mark, welcome to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Programming note, Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. Mark, first-time candidate, give us the short version of your background, please, sir.
I'm a rookie, first-timer. My background, although I was a pastor for 30 years, and as probably most of our watchers know, there's some politics involved in being a pastor in a local church. A lot of different opinions, ideas on both sides of the aisle, or aisles in this case in the church. So I was a pastor for most of my life, most of my career. Several years ago, my wife and I started a small business in Oshkosh. And so we do that now. So we're employing people. We work in real estate development. So we're improving homes and neighborhoods and property values at the same time as employing people too. And I also am a writer and author, and I've written a number of books, most of those geared towards helping people and helping build better people, better families, better communities. And married now for 33 years, my wife, Claudette, and I, and we have 4 kids and 1 granddaughter and 1 on the way. So that's kind of a bit of our family background. All of my children live in Oshkosh as well. I'm almost an empty nester. My youngest is 17. So I'm getting close to that, and that's part of the timing of this for me. Was I've always had an inkling and an itch to want to be involved in politics, and I've always been kind of in different roles as a difference maker, or attempting to make a difference in people's lives and in communities, mostly through the church realm, most of my career. But now wanting to do something in the political arena, and my kids being older and me having to be gone, and the schedule that you have to keep as a state representative, it just works a whole lot better for my family situation now for me to be involved.
The last 4 years have been very interesting in Wisconsin politics. Is there any policy decision that was made, or any issue that was a major factor in your deciding to run?
Well, I just think the economy, which is the big issue probably for everybody, is, we all wish things would get better, and we see little hopes, little twinkles that we think it's getting better. But then we'll feel a slide back, or it doesn't affect me, or it doesn't affect my neighbor, it doesn't affect the guy across the street, or my kids, or my family, maybe in how, them being able to get a job, or pay increases, or seeing orders come into companies for small business owners. So I think the big deal is wanting to see our economy grow again, wanting to see jobs started, wanting to see entrepreneurs have the incentive to spark in them that what's already in them, to want to create and to build business and to hire and to create jobs for people, to be able to create opportunities for that to happen here in Wisconsin.
On your website, you say you want to simplify our tax code and lower taxes, and you also believe in term limits. Which tax would you lower to help stimulate the economy, sir?
Well, there's a lot of different debates on how we can do that. I don't think we can totally get rid of income tax, or totally get rid of any of our taxing systems, because obviously we have to have the revenue for all the things that we're supporting. But I think there's things that we could probably tweak. I think the biggest issue, the easiest, well, maybe not the easiest, but perhaps the first thing we need to do is just to look at where we're spending. And is it necessary? Or are things out of whack? Are they out of balance in some of those areas? Are they things that were good 15, 20 years ago when we started those things, but they're really not a factor today, but yet no one's really taken a look at it, and we continue to support and throw money at it? So probably some areas where we can rearrange the budget, less here, more over there, because that's a bigger issue or more priority, or that affects more people perhaps. So some changes that need to happen there, preferably not raising taxes if we can't put that burden on people who are already struggling, who are already got their belts tightened and are doing everything they can at this point. So I don't think putting more of a tax burden on them is going to be any help to them. as much as we need to look at our spending. Just like we do in our homes or in our businesses, we do the same thing on trying to have a balanced budget, trying to stay within our means, trying to spend what we earn and not more, because when we get more, we get in trouble. And that's what's happened, in the last 8-10 years with much of our economy and the collapse of the banks and the housing market and the foreclosures and things. We got too far out there spending more than we really had, or we thought we were going to be, earning more. We thought the raises were coming. We thought the stocks were going to do better, and then they didn't, and then it hurt us all.
How many, since you believe in term limits, how many terms would you plan on serving?
I would say 3, maybe 4 to tops, I think. What's unique about these terms, and I'll say this as a rookie because it's a 2-year term, which is kind of crazy. It almost should be 3 or 4, because you spend a year to get elected, then you serve a year, and then you're spending the next year. You're trying to still serve, in your position, but now you're trying to get reelected again. It seems like a lot of waste of time and energy and money with 2-year terms, in my opinion. I would probably rather see 4-year terms and limit it to 2 terms.
Okay.
I think that'd be a better use of our money in the long run if we did something like that. I don't imagine that's going to change, and who am I? I'm the rookie. I'm the new guy. I'm probably not going to be the one that's going to convince everybody that needs to happen. And so many politicians do this as a career, whereas originally it was not founded to be a career. It was meant to serve. It was a part-time thing. Mm-hmm. You were a farmer. You had a business. Mm-hmm. But now it's become this thing where we major in it in college, and we become a career politician. That's what we do. And I think it's good to have normal, good people who are out there slugging it out with the rest of us, working, creating companies, jobs, raising families, for them to get in and to be a part of the process, rather than it be somebody that does it for a job or a living and it's their sole source of income.
One of the biggest spending items in the next 2-year budget will be public schools. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts? Any changes? Do we need a new school aid formula?
Well, formulas are fallible. No matter what kind of good formula we come up with, there's always going to be somebody that's not happy, or it doesn't do this for us like we hoped it would, or this school district or this population base doesn't get what they need, and these guys seem to be getting more. So formulas are imperfect, and I know from some study and research I've done, we've looked at different ideas and different formulas, but nothing seems to really solve the problem yet. Not to say that there couldn't be, and obviously we still need to keep looking at that and looking at the deficiencies of the current formula that we have, whether it needs to be changed, whether it needs to be tweaked, whether there needs to be exceptions maybe in some cases that need to take place. But the big picture is education is huge and it's important, and it's a large part, the largest part of our budget in the state, and it should be. I'm a big pro-education guy, multiple degrees all the way up to a doctorate, so I'm all about education. I've taught courses overseas, college courses, so I'm all about education. I've really pumped that into my kids too, how important that is. So definitely we need to look at education. It needs to be the best that it can be, and thank goodness, Wisconsin, we have a great education system. We have good teachers. We have good administrators. We're number 2 in the country, I believe, in ACT scores. So we're turning out a good product, of kids, of students, of future workers, and contributors to our state. Now we just want to keep them here, and it gets back to the job market again. Once they graduate from high school and college and tech school, how do we keep our good people here in Wisconsin?
Another big part of the budget debate in terms of schools is the school choice and voucher program. Mm-hmm. Would you like to see that expanded? Your position on?
Well, I think within reason. I think we need to be careful about expansion, or how fast we expand on something like that if we do expand. I'm not sure about all the arguments there for and against, having not been involved in those conversations at the legislative level. Myself, as a parent, I really believe deeply that education is the choice of the parent, not the state, not the federal government, that the parents should decide, what they want for their kids as far as education goes. And I've been involved in all 3. I mean, our kids have been in public schools, they've been in private parochial schools, and they've homeschooled, and multiple for each child. And it just depended on where our children were at that time, and what was best for them, what the public school offered, what the private offered, what the homeschooling offered. And so we've had our kids involved in all. So we've made choices as parents that we thought were best for our kids. And at the end of the day, we're the ones that have to live with that, on what's best for our children and their education. But I'm for school choice. For some of our school districts that maybe are struggling, we're not seeing as the top the college scores coming out of those schools. Maybe, I think every child deserves and every parent wants for their kids to have a great education and quality education, because we see how much of the world that opens up to them in their future, and for their prosperity and for their happiness. And if it's a bad situation in a bad school or a bad school district, whatever the case might be that's creating that, every kid should have a right to a good education. And moms and dads shouldn't have to wait until somebody fixes it. Okay. Because it may be, their kids may be out of high school by then, or maybe out of that particular school district by then. And so to wait and wait and wait just keeps putting those kids further and further behind. So to give them opportunities and choices that they have, just like when someone graduates from high school and they have choices on where they go to college. They can go to a state school, university, in Madison or UW-Oshkosh, or they can go to a private school. I think that choice is important to parents, and I don't think we should take away or limit a parent's choice on what's good for their kids.
Recently, Governor Walker asked lawmakers to withdraw from the Common Core standards. Do you have a position on that, sir?
Well, I've looked into Common Core a little bit. I think what the governor, from what I've read on him, his take on it is he thinks we can do better. That there's some limits to that, and I'm still always a big proponent, and no matter what area it is, that we bring things down to the smallest and lowest level. Rather than federal tell states what to do, states need to be states telling cities what to do. It needs to get down to the local district. I would rather see those standards. Maybe there's a framework given by the federal or a framework given by the state, but that the local school districts, who it's their children, it's our teachers, it's our administrators, that they work together to create the standard that they want for their community within a certain scope that's given to them. Yeah. Pushing it all down to the lowest level. Let the PTA and the parents have decisions in that. Let the students have decisions in that. The teachers, the superintendents of those schools have decisions in that. Because we might find that we get even better product and better schools and better teachers and better administrators and better students out of that because of the buy-in that we have at the local level, rather than something being projected or pushed on us, told to us that we have to do this or we have to do that.
There's a projection from the Wisconsin Taxpayer Alliance that we may have a transportation funding deficit of $2 million over the next 10 years. How would you fix that, sir?
Well, that's a huge problem because we need to have our infrastructures strong, and the governor has been working, I think, on some of those issues, and particularly, I think, in the bridges. He's spent some real time that he's emphasized fixing our bridges and stuff, and that's been kind of something across our nation because those had become so old, and of course big news, in Minnesota and places where bridges collapsed and people were hurt and killed, and so that's good, but our road system needs to continue too. I mean, for the sake of jobs and companies coming in here and commerce, and for that happens, the infrastructure and the roadway systems have to be there in order to transport goods and services back and forth. So that's really important. Where do we find the money to pay for that? Well, we've got to find it somewhere. Do we tax? Does it mean we raise taxes on license plates? Do we raise and registrations?
Gas tax,
gas taxes, toll booths. Like other states, like Illinois, have done. Where do we raise those at? And I think those are all being looked at on what to do there. Obviously, if you did it on gas or on plates, then it's more. It goes more to the consumer who's actually using the roads more, perhaps. And even our large tourist industry to out-of-state drivers who are coming in paying gas taxes. I'm not sure what's the answer or which of those are the answer, and that's something that if I'm elected, I'd want to be involved in that process because I see how important it is that those be taken care of. I mean, how many of us drive into another county or another state and the first thing on our mind is, man, look how terrible these guys' roads are. Or in the wintertime and it's snowing and ice and whatever, and we're on nice roads and we drive into another county and we go, man, these guys haven't even taken care of their roads, haven't cleaned them up. So we all know what that's like and how dangerous that is, and that it pops right into our mind to all of us. How are we going to pay for it? That becomes the big challenge.
A question on health care. As you know, 1 in 5 Wisconsin residents get their health care through our Medicaid program.
Right.
The American Hospital Association says our reimbursement rates for Medicaid are the second lowest.
Yeah.
If you've studied the issue, do you think they should be increased?
Probably, yeah. I think we've got to look at that. I mean, obviously, when that happens, now the hospitals have got to either write off some of that money or they got to pass on the bill to other people
Cost
who are
shifting.
paying the bills. So they have to come up with that somehow. So that's going to be paid for. And how much can they continually write off and still stay in business? At some point there's a pressure point there. I don't know if they're at that yet or not. But at some point there is, and at the same time passing it on to the other consumers. There's going to, at some point, everybody's going to stand up and say enough's enough, and that's going to get nasty too. So how do we raise that? I'm not sure. I mean, that's something I'd like, obviously, in the legislature to be a part of and to see and to research. What are our options? What are our answers on that? But I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
It's just a matter of what's the means and how do we do it.
There was a bill last session, and there'll be a bill next session to legalize medical marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
That travels, of course, with the legalization of recreational marijuana in Colorado and the state of Washington.
Right.
Your position on those issues?
Well, I don't think I would be in favor of legalizing recreational use of marijuana. I mean, I've seen what we've done with the legalization of other drugs, being alcohol and tobacco and stuff, and some of the kickback that's happened and how many billions of dollars that cost us because of the kickbacks, from drunk driving and alcoholism and domestic abuse and violence and a lot of crimes related to alcohol and then all the health issues related to tobacco and things like that. So I don't see that I would be in favor of recreationally. Now, if science and doctors are saying that this is a medicine like many of the other medicines that we have and that we prescribe, I'd be open to that dialogue as far as it being classified as medicinal and medicinal purposes with a prescription from a doctor. Yeah.
Do you support, should first offense drunken driving be a crime, Mark?
I don't think so. Everybody makes mistakes. Maybe the only exception I would be open to on that is in the case of death. If a death occurred, maybe, yeah. In that case, that's a major crime. That's more than just a little mistake and, okay, now don't do it again, And then and I think it gets harder, on the second. Maybe it's a crime on the second offense. So I want to be firm on that, but not to the point that it's unrealistic if someone's not going to make a mistake or someone's just barely over the limit. But I'm definitely against drunk driving and people not being in control of a vehicle and creating homicides and accidents and destruction and damage to property and so on and so forth. But first time, that seemed a little harsh to me, because people do make mistakes, sometimes even accidentally, not intentionally. Mm-hmm. And so I would have a hard time doing that on a first offense.
Okay, almost out of time. Two more quick questions. One of the first bills that passed last session changed the rules so Gogebic Taconite was able to apply for the potentially the permit for the open pit mine in Ashland and Iron counties.
Right.
Do you know enough about that bill to know whether you would have supported it?
Well, I don't know that enough about the bill, but we know that those counties in the north have a history of mining, and that's been their main source of income for many decades. We call it Iron County,
yes.
because that's what they do. They mine iron for all those years. So I'm happy to see that because it's pretty bad up there. The unemployment and the fallout of that unemployment is pretty bad up there. So I'm glad to see that there could be opportunities for, they're saying, almost 6,000 people, I think, for jobs and over $1 billion impact to the economy here in Wisconsin. That makes me extremely happy. And yet, from what I've read, we've not, taken back or given in at all on our standards as far as the environment goes, and air and water and protecting the environment and doing sticking to high standards that we already have here in Wisconsin. That we're committed to that, and I think the people working there are going to be committed to that because they live there and they want to make sure that the place that they live stays clean and isn't destroyed, for the sake of industry.
Okay, and then final question: do you want to highlight any differences between you and your opponent on November 4th, Representative Hintz?
Well, I think there's huge differences. That's what people have told me. I'm married. He's not. I have a family. He doesn't. So I'm coming from that whole side of things of being a family man and understanding the pleasures and the strains, both of that, of what that's like. And I'm not a politician. He's a college major, I think, in politics and has worked in politics pretty much his whole life for some other politician and now himself for the last 4 terms. my background is in business, in nonprofits, working in communities. So I'm coming from a whole fresh new way of looking at things, questioning things, believing in term limits. I don't plan to do this a long time, 6 years, 8 years, I'm out. So my take is get in, make a difference, stir things up. If they don't vote me in, no big deal, I'm out of here. I don't have any aspiration to be a career politician.
Very good. Well, thank you. Mark Elliott of Oshkosh is the Republican candidate in the 54th Assembly District. Mark, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.